So you go for the pattern stamp tool and then you pick the appropriate pattern that you want from your personal collection of patterns, right? And then it's essentially obviously you need to have like a good brush to kind of go along with this technique, and I'd recommend some kind of bigger, broader brush just because it helps fill in big areas or big sections of a canvas quickly. And you can always kind of run through different patterns that you've kind of created, right? And you can use it to kind of find or generate quick compositions, generate color palettes, right? And you also want to be able to play with the settings. So for me, I usually have it or play with the impressionist mode. Sometimes I'll have it on and off. In this case, it's off. And what this does is every time you kind of make a new stroke, it kind of paints the actual image. But when you do have the impressionist setting on, that's when it kind of jiggles. Well, not jiggles, but it kind of like the colors go along with the brush spacing, right? It's kind of like the apply per tip when it comes to the color dynamics, right? Setting. So you want to be able to just play with these options, the impressionist and the aligned option. Now for the aligned option, it's essentially where I usually leave it off, but you can turn it on if you want. And what that does is essentially the pattern that you've created from, say, a photo, it kind of just appears as is. And I usually don't do this just because it's not the goal. I usually just pick photos that are kind of visually interesting, right? If the colors are good, I just make it into some kind of pattern. And then that's usually how whenever I'm trying to generate a composition or a random like bunch of strokes to kind of see some kind of composition, this is usually the setting that I go for. I have the aligned setting turned off and the impressionist turned off, right? Setting turned off. And you can also play with the modes when it comes to the pattern stamp tool. And I usually do this to kind of add a bit of hue variety. And this is what I've learned from Hugo Harmatiuk. Like, he has a video on YouTube where he used this technique to kind of add a bit of hue variety. He picked a texture and then he picked some kind of blending mode to kind of just add a bit of variety, right? And that's actually how I started to learn, or how I used it. This is how I used the pattern stamp tool in the beginning, and then eventually I just kind of used it to help me generate some interesting compositions, right? Yeah. So here I did this kind of quick painting. It took about almost an hour, right? And using this technique, right? So I based it off of the this kind of Gucci photo that I turned into a pattern. I think it helps if you have like a bunch of patterns made, just because it gives you like a lot of options to play with. But in this case, I did go for the Gucci kind of thing. Is it Gucci? Fuck. And then, by the way, it also helps if you pick photos that have good color schemes, just because it will help you in your conceptualization phase, right? Because you want it to be interesting in the beginning, right? The colors, right? So just pick something that's kind of interesting and that also has a good range of values, so you can always kind of color pick as you see fit, right? So here it's more of a random concept, an environment piece, and I wasn't really sure what to do with it, but I just kind of played around. And yeah, it's kind of weird. I'm not sure what this thing is, but it's kind of interesting, right? And what this kind of technique does is, again, it takes away the pressure of having to start from scratch, right? And it helps to especially when it comes to, again, starting a painting, or it can help you kind of see shapes, because often you won't have a clear picture of your thing, of your concept in the beginning. So it helps to have some kind of method to generate a bunch of random like images or strokes, so that you're essentially trying to use your mind's eye, to see patterns, right? Kind of like how we see certain forms in cloud formations. It helps to kind of have a technique where you can generate like a bunch of random shapes and shit, and then from there you can use your mind to kind of find patterns, right, and shapes that can help you, iterate more interesting concepts. Yeah. Let me just see my progress here. So anyway, it's more of an architectural kind of piece, and I'm not exactly, I didn't really have like an inspirational thing for this piece. And I actually got that golden thing from, I think, the belt of some kind from the photo, and then I just used that to kind of make the architecture essentially. Seeing this painting right now, I'm not proud of the pillars that I made, the 4 pillars. It's kind of weird, and it's not like well developed. And the perspective is kind of boring. It's kind of like a standard concept art piece. I usually like to, or I try to go for dynamic shots, just because it's more interesting to look at, right? This is more of a typical kind of standard shot. It's great for like designing shit, because it helps you focus more on the concept rather than the storytelling per se. But it's kind of but it's fine. I did have fun though with this thing, and notice how I'm not even color picking, right? I'm basing it, or I'm just color picking from the actual original pattern that I've made. I'm not using the color wheel in Photoshop. So again, this is one of the reasons why it's good to pick a good photo and then make that into some kind of pattern, right? And Photoshop to kind of help you, start concepts, start paintings, right? And it would have helped if I actually had reference so that I could make something a bit more interesting, but fuck it, But it's kind of interesting, right? It's kind of weird, but it is an interesting kind of concept, right? And I should have added some kind of person to indicate scale, right? But, it is what it is. And you don't even have to rely so much on the color, because you can always kind of put you could always turn it into like a grayscale painting and use like the set of values that come from the photo to kind of help start a painting. So you don't actually need the color, but it helps if you have like a good photo with good kind of colors, just in case if you want to start with color for your concepts, right? And again, I do recommend that you turn off aligned and you turn off the impressionist settings for the pattern stamp tool, just because that's what helps you, or helps me with the compositions. You can see more of the shapes, and whenever you kind of make a new stroke with the pattern stamp tool, it kind of restarts the photo. So it helps you create more. It helps with the randomness of the shapes, right, when you're starting a painting. And that helps when making compositions or finding compositions within some kind of chaotic thing. So now here you can actually see me just finishing things up here with the mixer brush. And I think I did try to use the smudge tool a bit, but it didn't really work out. Everything else from here is just playing with the atmosphere a bit, trying to make it more like putting it more further back, right? And here you can see me use some cloud brushes just to kind of add a bit of, well, atmosphere, right? Yeah, eventually I will kind of lighten up the architecture in the background, just because it's too contrasted right now and it looks kind of too close. So I need to find, or I did find a way to kind of tone it down with the contrast down with the soft brush, I think, under some kind of, I think I used lighter color for the brush mode. Here you can see me use the kind of hue variety technique with the pattern stamp tool, right? And then I'm pretty close to finishing right now, so just more editing, right? Atmospheric stuff, but that's pretty much it. So hopefully hopefully this is helpful to you. And if you're kind of struggling with starting a painting, try using the pattern stamp tool, right? So that's it for this video. Keep drawing, keep painting, and stay free.